Welcome everyone. My name is Olivier, and I'm a prof in the Faculty of Information. I'm the liaison for the UXD concentration. I have some current students with me here today. If you quickly want to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ariana, and I'm a first-year UXD student.
I'm Panise. I'm also a first-year UXD student.
Great. Ariana and Panis were with me in October for this information day, and they were able to answer quite a bit of questions. So if you do have questions, you can put them into the chat. And what we'll do is I'll do a small presentation of what the concentration is about. I'll talk about like the top questions that I normally get from this audience when I do the information days. And then if you have more specific questions, then just put them in the chat. And I promise what I'll do is I'll backtrack all the way to the top of the chat, and I'll make sure that I'm able to get all the way to the bottom and answer everyone's question. So UXD concentration, as I said in my presentation earlier, a very growing concentration. We started 32 students in 2016. We now have close to 120, 125 that joined us every year. So that creates a class of almost 200-ish, 250-ish student. That includes first and second year students, obviously. And we also have quite a number of students who do take UXD just to learn about the topic of UXD, or to combine it with LIS, with museum study, with archives, or with human-centered data science. So we do have quite a bit of students in the intro course. The intro course this semester has 6 sections in it. There's 172 students, so that just gives you like the magnitude of the UX concentration. So the D in UXD stands for design, but you got to be very careful when you hear this word design. It means several things to different people. We are not a design school in a sense that we do not offer a bachelor's of design, or we are not a school like OCAD University, which offer more like sort of creative design oriented type of problem. The D in UXD for us in the Faculty of Information stands for the design process. So the process of going through UX and designing experiences. And so while we are definitely focused in design in UXD, we cannot make you a designer in a sense that you cannot come to our school to be a graphic designer, for example. That is not the type of program that we offer. We cannot also offer you the same type of design education that you would get from a bachelor's of design. Like if a school that you know across Canada or Toronto or wherever you're from offers a bachelor's of design, then you obviously are focusing for 4 years on the discipline of design, which encompasses all kinds of things which we are not able to cover in full in our concentration, obviously, as you can imagine. So our UXD concentration focuses on designing experience and using design thinking processes to study how to do UX research. So to do data collections with users using survey interviews, questionnaires, and then synthesize this data into personas, into empathy map, into scenarios, as is scenarios to be scenarios, in order to analyze and understand people's goals, people's desires, people's obstacles, people's pain points, and synthesizes this information into then ideation. So how do you then ideate and create and use design thinking tools again to create solution that addresses some of these pain points while keeping the empathy with the user, obviously, and then reduces the obstacles of the user and increases the experiences, the positive experiences that people are going to get out of interacting with your solution. And then we go into prototyping. So that is probably the closest we get to the discipline of the mechanic design. So we use tools such as Balsamic, um, Figma, and there's all kinds of different tools, Envision, in order to prototype a solution at a very low fidelity, pen and paper type of prototype, medium fidelity, wireframing, we call that in UX, and then high fidelity prototype, which is, we have a course on that where we look at some basics of graphic design, like composition, visual hierarchy, typography, colors, composition. So we do look at some of those basic things, although we don't pretend to turn you into a graphic designer, but we want you to be able to understand how to use Apple guidelines and Android guidelines and Apple's graphic and Android's graphic libraries in order to create solutions that are like looking and feeling like their real native product. And then we conclude this whole sort of cycle of design with what we call evaluation, usability evaluation, which is more along the line of research again, going back to the users, doing usability testing, doing heuristic evaluation, doing walkthroughs, all kinds of different things that we can sort of study in this perspective. So I'm going to share my screen here. Give me 1 second if I can. I'm going to try to attempt to share my screen, although I don't really share screen application. Okay, allow PowerPoint. Okay, I believe it's this one here. Yep, great. So I hope most people can see this. So UX is about content, user goals, business goals, and interaction. So when you look at user goals, you're looking at that part that I just mentioned, like doing the research, understanding people's motivation, people's reaction, people's action, people's pain points, really going deep down into empathizing with your users and understanding what their current situations are, what their needs are. Then you also have to understand what content people need access to. So we have a course called Information Architecture that helps us understand such content. And the user interface design course as well, right? How do people access content? What content do they need to be displayed? How do you architect this content? Then you have interaction, which is all the interaction mechanism. There's several ways to interact with digital content and non-digital content as well. So on a phone, for example, you can tap, you can swipe with 2 fingers, 3 fingers, 4 fingers. There's certain widgets, certain user interfaces, components that allow you to do certain modes of interaction, some others. So when is it best to use a menu versus this? When is it best to use radio button versus checkboxes? So all these are interaction rules that we study in a course called User Interface Design. And then there's the business goals. And the business goals really are important because it talks about value. It talks about what kind of benefits are you bringing to your users? What kind of value proposition, what kind of job to be done are you bringing to your users when you're designing these experiences? So we studied that a little bit more in the last course called INF 2192, which is the Representing UX, in which we talk about experience mapping and business value proposition. And we really try to look at not just designing experiences for the sake of designing experiences, but really to get a deeper dive into like the types of benefits and values that these experiences are bringing to people. So we have, as I mentioned before, 3 professors right now, myself, Professor Tony Tang, and Professor Valian Pandeleev. We are adding Professor Anastasia Kuzminik in January of 2021, in just a month, and Professor Priyank Chandra also in January 2021. I'm a teaching stream professor, so I mainly focus on teaching. I teach the foundation course. The foundation course is an extremely large course to teach. It has 6 studio sections, and it has two big, huge lecture sections. So it's quite a challenge to put this course together. I also teach in the undergraduate program in the Bachelor's of Information courses alongside of design as well. Professor Tang teaches information architecture, and he also teaches a course on augmented reality and virtual reality. He's an expert in AR, VR. So that is a course that we have as an elective in our UX concentration. Professor Valian Pendeleev teaches the user-centered design course and the user interface design course, as well as a course on UX research for gaming. So Professor Pendeleev comes from Ubisoft. So he worked at Ubisoft for quite a number of years. So he's an expert in UX games. So that's also a course that we have as an elective course. Professor Kozmunik will teach a course on user-centered design as well, and she will most likely be developing a course on virtual agent, chatbots, voice user interfaces, conversational user interfaces. That is her area of expertise, and this is a very, very sort of important area of expertise, especially now, like we're starting to speak to our devices a lot more. We're starting to use conversational modes as ways to interact with machine, not just tapping and mouse clicking. So that is going to be something that we're going to develop in the next year or two. Professor Chandra is an expert on design in marginalized population. So he will teach a course this winter called Information and Communication Technology for Marginalized Users. And basically, he does research with population around the world that don't have the same kind of access to technology or the same kind of privileged access to technology as we do in first world nation. So very important and interesting aspect too that he's bringing to the UX concentration, this all aspects of sometimes we want to design experiences, but an experience for somebody who has low bandwidth or almost no internet connectivity cannot be the same as somebody who has like a very powerful 150 or 300 megabytes per second internet connectivity bandwidth. So this is where we're going to start introducing courses on designing for marginalized population and also looking at design in general from a critical lens. And thinking like what are the impacts of some of those design that we're putting together on these different populations. In terms of foundation course, we have 5 required courses in UXD. The first one is the foundation of UX. It's offered in the fall every year. It's a studio-based course. We start with a bunch of lectures and then we go into the studio. We fortunately have 2 studio rooms, 2 UX studios in the Faculty of Information, very beautiful state-of-the-art studios that I just designed a year ago and put together for the students. Unfortunately now, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, they are closed. But in general, the studios are open to UXD students 24/7. So there are courses offered there, of course, but when there are no courses, evenings and weekends, UXD students can have access to the studios at all time and then can go work on their design projects. So the foundation course is not a foundation of UX, but it's also a foundation to studio thinking and how do we do studio learning. And Ariana could talk about that, and Panis as well, talk about that a little bit more. This year we're using tools like Mural, and all kinds of online digital sticky tools and whiteboarding tools in order to do design. But my number 1 rule of design when you work in the studio is the last thing you need is a computer. The first thing you need is a pack of sticky notes and a marker and a whiteboard. And the studio is designed to be a tactile, hands-on studios, lots of whiteboard, lots of sticky notes, lots of design king, scissors, glue, scotch tape, etc., etc. Like it's almost like a kindergarten class, basically, where people learn how to design with their hands they don't learn how to design with a computer. That's you're not going to learn much by designing with a computer. You have to kind of play and be tactile in terms of design thinking. So hopefully this is going to come back soon. But for now, the studios are closed and we are using some digital tools. Fortunately, there exist some digital tools that allows us to do very similar things. But yes, this time you need a computer because the tools are digital. We have a course called Information Architecture, which teaches you the basis of how to architect information on display, which is also offered in the fall and most likely offered in the summer as well. I cannot guarantee that the summer offering is happening all the time, but often in the last 4 years, we've offered this course in the summer. So we'll see for next summer, but we have a course called 2169, User-Centered Information Systems Development, which is focusing a little bit more on user research. It's offered either in the fall or in the winter, and we have a course on user interface design, focusing on graphics and graphic libraries and interaction design. So these 4 courses here, all the way to 2191, are the 4 courses you need to complete if you want to do the co-op option. So if you do want to do the co-op option in UXD in your first year, you need to complete these 4 courses, which means you're going to have 4 elective courses left because there's 4 in the fall, 4 in the winter. That's 8 in total. You have 4 UXD courses to take. Therefore, you're going to take 4 other electives of your choice. Or you're going to do 2 concentration, and you're going to start taking courses from your second concentration. That's possible as well. When you come back from co-op in the winter of second year, and this course is reserved for second year students only, we have a Capstone course called Representing UX, in which we talk about experience mapping, job to be done, business value proposition. We grow we really look at it from a sort of a career readiness type of point of view, because at that point, you're graduating in 4 months and you should be ready to hit the market and go get a job. We have lots of electives. UX research for video game, accessibility and inclusive design, which is a new elective for this year, teaching you the core principles of accessibility design and inclusive design. We have a course on usability testing, an entire 12-week course on usability testing. We have a course on information visualization. We have a course on mixed realities. I teach a course called UX for Gallery, Libraries, Archive, and Museum every other year. We have a course on design and marginality. We have a new course coming up this winter, which I just introduced last week, called UX Leadership and Influence, sort of a UX writing, UX communication course. And we have a course at the PhD level called Interaction Design, which some students can take in their second year. Portfolio is a very, very important part of being a UX student. It is not mandatory to have a portfolio to apply into the program. As I said, you are not admitted into a program with a specific concentration. You're admitted to the MI degree, so you don't need a portfolio to get in, but you will need a portfolio to get out. That is for sure. No students can get a job in this field without a portfolio. Whether it's a co-op job or full-time job or an internship or what have you. So portfolio starts right away in INF 1602 in the first foundation course in the fall of your first year. It is part of the course requirement. It's worth 10% of your grade. You start your portfolio. You have an About Me page. You start building your cases in which you showcase your course project. And then the more you do projects in other courses, the more incremental your portfolio becomes. You iterate on it. You add cases, you add school project. If you go on an internship or something, you add cases there, and you grow your portfolio to the point where it's ready at the end of the concentration. So your portfolio basically is another design project in your UXD concentration. You have to keep working on it, iterating on it, and building it throughout the courses. But we do start it in INF 1602, and all the courses in the concentration, every single one of them, is designed to have a portfolio component. So no matter what UXD course you take, whether it's a required UX course or an elective course, you can have a portfolio component to talk about at the end of that course. When it comes to co-op, well, a lot of our students go to co-op in the summer or the fall, the summer and the fall semester between first and second year. So here's how it goes. If you decide to go to co-op, you can find your own job if you want, or there's a job board as well in our school, and we're going to post the job, and you can work with our career officer to help you find a job, or you can go find your own. It's totally up to you. If you qualify for co-op, you could do 1/8 months co-op, which would be from May of after your first year all the way to December of your second year. So for you, it would be May of 2022 to December of 2023, I believe. 21, no, December of 2021, right? And then you would come back in winter of 2022 to do your last semester. You are allowed to take some courses while you're in co-op, not a lot, maybe 1 or 2 to keep your degree going, providing that your employer lets you do so, and providing that you're able to do the courses. This year, it's very easy because all the courses are remote. So therefore, everybody can come and do the courses. But when the courses are in person, if your co-op happens in Ottawa, then you will not be able to come in person to do the course. So therefore, you cannot take that course, right? So that's an option. You can also do one co-op only, either in the summer of 2022 or in the fall of 2022. You can do 4 months instead of 8 months. And then if you don't do co-op, which is not the end of the world, by the way, lots of students do not do co-op. You have to understand we have over 150 students in UXD, and we get about 25 co-op jobs. So there's lots of UXD students who don't do co-op. They do either internships or they do summer jobs or freelancing or whatever have you. There's lots of different possibilities. If you do not do co-op, then you come back in the fall of 2022. You can either start a second concentration or finish your second concentration if you've already started one. You can do more UX electives if you want. I maintain a list of courses from engineering, computer science, psychology, like music. Like there's lots of different departments across campus that have UX related courses that you can go take as well. Or you could just do electives in our faculty. That's really, it depends on you and your taste and what you want, right? So the question that I get the most often in this session is, do experience to come join the UX concentration? And the answer is no. Our program is not meant to only welcome students who have bachelor's of user experience in a master's of UX. It's not that. We welcome everybody. We use the foundation course in the fall to level everybody on the same playing ground, which means there are people who will have some UX and some design experience. There's people who won't, and then you have to accept that. It's like that for all of our concentration. So it's not just in UX, it's everywhere in our MI degree. We welcome people from so many different departments and perspective and backgrounds and undergraduate backgrounds. We cannot assume that people have the same level of education in terms of their knowledge of a specific discipline when they come in. They have the same level of education with respect to all having an undergraduate degree, but at the same time, they come from different disciplines. Used to be back 4, 5, 6 years ago that we would have about 60 to 70% of the students who would come from the humanities in UX. This is not the case anymore. We have people coming from engineering, computer science, business, architecture. It's a mix of everything. It really is a mix of everything. It's almost like 10, 15-ish% of every discipline you can think of. So that's one question I often get. Do we need experience? No. Do we need technical knowledge to get into the concentration? No, you don't. Do I need to know how to program, to code, to come to the concentration? No, you don't. In fact, we do not use coding in this concentration. We do not teach you how to code. This is not our bread and butter. If you want to learn how to code, there are much better places to come than our program. Our program is a master's degree to achieve mastery of skills in UX design. So it is not about coding, it's about solving problems for people who are going to hire you to solve these kinds of experience problems that people have within their product or company or services or whatever, right? Like, so being used to solve wicked type problem is a very good skills to develop along the concentration. So you do not need to have coding skills to come in and very advanced technical skills. We do use software, Figma, Balsamic, InVision, but they're mainly to create user interface, and they're drag and drop software. So you basically drag the user interface component on the screen and you build your user interfaces. You do not necessarily code all these user interfaces and connect data to them. Another questions that I get very often, which is interesting, but it comes up often, is do I need a Mac or a PC to come to this concentration? And the answer is you can have whatever computer tools you want, because I do not teach tools that are specific to a given form. I will not lie to you. I've worked 8 years in industry. In UX. I know lots of people who work in industry in UX. I know nobody in the field of UX who work on PC. If you know somebody, you can let me know, but I don't know anybody from my close friends or managers or who work on a PC. Everybody works on a Mac. However, when you come to this program, I cannot force you to buy a $4,000 machine when you can go buy a PC in a regular electronics store for $699. So I cannot force you to take that approach. So as a result, I teach programs and we use softwares that are platform agnostics in our concentration. I do not teach a very famous UX program called Sketch. I do not teach that in not part of the concentration, because Sketch is for Macintosh only. And if I were to teach it, everybody who has a PC could not do the assignments, could not do the work. So unless they have a virtual machine and all of that, but we don't want to get there. So I don't teach these software. I use Figma instead, which is Sketch compatible. It's a cloud-based platform, and you can use it on Mac or PC. I use Balsamic, Mac or PC. Google Drive, Mac or PC. InVision, Mac or PC. So basically, you are, yes, Figma is actually outpacing Sketch in the industry. Figma, I started using Figma when they first came out as a software 5-6 years ago, and everybody was laughing at me. Everybody was like, why are you teaching Figma? This is ridiculous. Like, you should not be teaching Figma. And I had a very good partnership with Figma. They give me like 200 free students account in the first year that they came out on the market, and I started teaching Figma right away. And now Figma is becoming part of job postings, and people are asking for it. And when you put the Figma icon on your resume, people recognize the Figma logo, and they know that it's a tool that people use in UX and all of that. So in a sense, I don't need to teach Sketch anymore, because Figma has taken over the market segment quite a bit. So you do not need a Mac to come here. The students can comment on it. I would say that when I sit in a classroom as an instructor, I see about 70-ish% of the students have Mac, maybe 30% have PCs. But as long as you can go on a web browser and Google Drive and things like that, you're good to go. So I don't see a problem really, and I wouldn't want you to feel obligated to buy a Mac. So let me go through some of the questions here. I'll go back to the top of the chat, and hopefully some of these questions have been answered by my wonderful students here. If I want to pursue UX research with UXD, how do I do it? So this question is a very interesting question. We teach both. We teach research and design in our concentration. If you want to pursue UX research, you could do a little bit more research type course in our faculty. We do have a research method course. We do have a KMD 1001, which is the Foundations of Knowledge Theory and Research. So there are ways to make a path into research. I would just like to warn you that the big companies can afford having UX researchers. The small companies cannot. So if you apply to a small company or a startup, or as a UX person, you will be asked to do pretty much everything. If you apply to Google, Facebook, Microsoft, some of these larger type company, like some of the banks, for example, they will have specific UX researcher posting. In fact, one of our former students works for Google as a UX researcher. So just be careful about narrowing and bucketing yourself too much. I know that a lot of students have interest, research versus design or whatever, but it really depends on your ability to secure some of those jobs in companies that can actually have the means to afford several types of roles, as opposed to more of a user interface or user experience designer generic role. How do you approach teach empathy? So we use a tool called empathy mapping, and we try to understand what our users do, what do they say, how do they feel, and what do they think, through talking with users to deeply connecting with them. And we use then this data from the empathy map to start thinking about the needs of the users and ideas that will solve their obstacles, their pain points. So we use a very user-centric type of approach throughout in order to make sure that we never forget that user. And I also teach the students quite a bit about becoming the voice of the user, right, through their personas and through their research, being engaged at becoming the voice of the user. We also, there's a big emphasis also in the first year course about storytelling and being able to storytell the story and being the voice of the user through stories. So that's pretty much the approach that we use. Information systems and design sounds closely related. Well, yes and no. Information systems and design is a back-end approach. It's about data modeling, database, how to store, how to create models of data, and UXD is about front end, like the experience, the user interface-ish. Yes, they are related. I mean, my background is both. I come from engineering and computer science, so I have both ISD. In fact, I used to teach in the ISD concentration for 3 years before I completely moved to UX. I was splitting my time half and half, ISD and UXD. It is a very good mix, but they're related to some extent that you need to understand users' requirements. You need to do research, but what you do with the research is fairly different. One is informing data modeling, one is informing front-end interaction. But they have very close ties, of course. The students in ISD will talk a lot about user requirements and personas and user stories and things like that, like we do in UX. Okay, Ariana, insert this. How did this concentration differ from the UXD bootcamps program also offered at U of T? So I think you're referring to the School of Continuing Learning NAS, when you talk about that. I think, I'm not sure, because you also said the UXD program offered at U of T. So that's from the School of Continuing Studies. I don't really know what they do, to be honest. Like, I know they have similar courses as us. This is the School of Continuing Study is non-credit courses, so you just do it for the sake of keeping your learning, your lifelong learning type of going. So it will not lead to any recognized degree or for credit type of courses. I mean, I know they have good instructors. I've looked at some of their rosters of instructors in the past. About a year ago, they've had fairly good people. That some of them that I knew from industry. It's very different. Like, one leads to a master's degree, one leads to non-credit courses type. So if you just want to do UX, then yeah, boot camp or things like it, you may want to consider this, but it is very different to do a boot camp and just get an education with a certificate versus getting a master's degree that will follow you for the rest of your life. Like, so I always use the example, if you do a boot camp in UX and in 10 years UX is not a thing anymore, let's assume UX is gone, it's like vanished, like it's not a thing. Well, not vanished in a sense that it doesn't exist, but like it's not like the thing anymore that people do work on to get jobs or whatever, then your boot camp is useless. Like, it's basically you need to re-educate yourself. Your master's degree will still be with you. So whatever job you apply when UX is not a thing anymore, you still have the MI designation next to your name, and you also have a master's degree from U of T next to your name. So that will always count for a certain weight in the whole decision of hiring versus just a boot camp, which is like a terminal thing. If as long as the thing you did your boot camp in is hot and you can get jobs in it, good. But once that's gone, like it's terminal basically. There's nothing else you could do. How is different than the one offered at UBC? I don't know the program at UBC. I'm really sorry about that. Designing for People Research Network focuses on human-centered design. So the Designing for People, the DFP Human Network at UBC, it is a cluster from the Faculty of Information, from their computer science department, psychology, and some other program as well. I have some friends who are part of that program from computer science, but I don't really fully know whether they do UX or they do more human-computer interaction and HCI. It's a cluster of people from all around campus that is kind of put together. If you look at their program, and I'm looking at it right now, they have people from psychology, engineering, computer science, faculty of information, civil engineering, architecture. So to be honest, I'm not very familiar with their curriculum, so you'd have to look at more. My guess is that to be part of that DFP, you need to choose a home department. So you would either go into information or into computer science or into engineering, and then you would join that cluster based on which home program you're from. But I'm not sure what. I don't think they have a specific degree that they offer. I think what they do is they offer. So I'm looking at the program requirements here, and I think they offer this kind of clustered program through different departments. So yeah, that's quite different, but very good people there actually. My good friend of mine, Joanna McGranier, she's in computer science, wonderful person. There's very good people at UBC. In fact, this is where I'm supposed to go on my sabbatical in a year and a half to learn about that program and be part of that cluster for a year, so that I can come back with more information when I finish my sabbatical. Do you find a lot of managers taking UXD as a specialization, and students end up in product? So product management, very interesting. Product management is a definite pathway with a UX degree. That's very interesting questions. Thank you for asking. You do UX, you start with some more junior position where you do the grunt work, like the research, the requirements, the framing, the wireframing, the evaluation, all of that stuff. But eventually you want to come to a point where you manage a suite, you manage a service, you manage a product. So yes, we do have some students who have gone through product management roles, maybe not as soon as they graduate, but 2 to 3 years after they've been working full time, and they end up in the product management roles. So to me, a product manager is somebody with UX, but that has more of a holistic vision of what the product, the service is about. So it's not just about UX, but it definitely includes a huge part of UX, because you need to take people into consideration, release cycles, users' feedback, customers' feedback, customer value, the whole aspects of value business proposition is a product management's role, right? Like, it's to define what is the product and what is its value for our users and customers. So to me, there's a direct pathway if you hope to become management. Do you find a lot of product managers taking UX as a specialization? Yes, okay, great. Is there, hi there, how do we connect with, okay, so Emily had a question. Did I answer that question? Oh, yes, okay. That was the UBC question. Would be, this is, if you're taking, or between, okay. I am in education background, and I'm also working in this area. I'm quite interested in UXD. Yeah, there's a lot of ties there with UX and education. Um, there's the whole aspects of instructional design, online learning. We have the Knowledge Media Design Institute where there are people. You should look at a person, Chloe, called Jim Slotta, and at OISE, Jim Slotta, Slotta. He is like sort of a UX education type person, and he teaches a course for us in the winter semester, and as part of the Knowledge Media Design Institute, which is a specialized sort of certificate that you can add on top of your MI degree without taking more courses. And I'm really interested in the idea of education too. I'm a teaching student professor, so I'm really interested in the idea of studio learning and how do people learn by doing and things like that. So I'm not exactly sure what your background is in education and how wide and what your specific interests are, but definitely there's a link between UX and education. And I would encourage you to look at the Knowledge Media Design Institute, KMD, and the collaborative specialization in KMD, because this is where you get exposed to a lot. I mean, I used to be the director of the collaborative specialization in KMD, and 3/4 of our students were from OISE, which is our faculty of education, and they were really interested in what you're interested in, is this UX and education type of relationship. So there's definitely a group at U of T and a cluster that can actually answer these questions. However, I'm not sure you're going to find that in the boot camp that is offered by U of T. So how does this program expand upon design thinking UX principle course you can find at IDEO? And then I mean, that's an interesting question. Again, it all depends on what you're looking for. We use some of the principles of IDEO and Nielsen Norman groups at the beginning in the foundation course because it's an introduction course. So I would say it doesn't expand so much beyond that. But once we go into experience mapping and the whole concept of like trying to study like moments of experiences, we also get into XD, which is experience design, not UXD, but XD. We get into service design. We get into like a much more holistic approach, I think, about UX than I found done in our NNG group that they're very transactional. Their approach to UX is a transaction. And we teach that these transaction in the first few courses because we need to, but eventually we want to get away from these transaction and we want to move towards more XD. So I'm not sure it answers the questions completely, but at the end of the day, to be honest, like IDEO, Dunn Norman Group, our program, this program, that program, it's very similar principles. You're not going to reinvent the double diamond design principles yet. So I do partner with a lot of industry partners in the foundation course. I partner with IBM and a lady called Allison Cox, who's most likely going to teach our leadership course as well next year. And we try to bring it. So I teach the design thinking IBM enterprise approach in my foundation course. So that's again based on the IDEO approach, but has some slight sort of changes and improvements and things. So but at the end of the day, the foundations are very similar. I'll be honest with you, like it's. Do we also get to study cultural context when studying UXD? For that, you will need to take courses in CNT. So you can take elective courses in culture and technology. But Professor Chandra is also going to bring that sort of aspect in his new courses. Okay. I hold a bachelor's of engineering in electronic and communication. Yeah, we've had about 10 or 15 students who had the same program in the past and want to take up UXD concentration, but didn't have any prior design or psychology courses in my undergrad. I don't think there will be any issue, to be honest. Like again, our basic intro courses and design thinking courses is meant to be accessible to people with any kind of background. So you'll learn more on the human side of things. Somebody comes with a psychology degree learns more on the technical side of things, right? Like for you, the technical side of things is going to be a no-brainer. Like, you come from engineering, so that's. But then the human side of things, you learn a little bit more on your own, and vice versa for other students. So that's why the foundation course is a leveling course, right? We try to level everybody on the same plane. So. Wondering the quality of a successful applicant. Oh, that's not a question I can answer because I'm not a successful applicant. No, I'm just kidding. Professors don't get involved in decision making and who we admit into the program. I know it surprises a lot of students, but we don't. We get the students in September in our classes, and they've already been admitted, and they've already been in the program, so they've already picked their concentration. So if you want to know the quality of successful applicant to get in, it's better to talk to Stephanie and Andrea at admissions, and they're gonna help you a lot with that question. What is the successful criteria to be a good UXD student? Somebody who's curious, somebody who can listen fairly well to others, and while listening, try to empathize with them, and trying to deeply connect and understand who these people are and what are their pain points, and that's very good criteria to succeed in UX. Somebody who is comfortable with ambiguity, very, very important in UX. I can give each person here, each 24% in the chat right now, a design prompt and a design problem. Build something that will solve this and this and this. And there will be 24 different solutions. Some solutions will be better than others. Some solutions will be more optimal than others. But at the end of the day, it is not a black and white discipline. It is not a discipline of binary. So if you come from a binary world where you need an answer, a mathematical answer for everything, this is not what UX is about. UX is about compromise. It's about ambiguity. It's about wicked problem. UX answers to humans. We don't answer to robots and to codes and to our algorithm. We answer to human. We design for humans, therefore we answer to these humans when we design. And as soon as you put human into the equation, you cannot be binary. It is impossible. You cannot be, it's either this or that. It's not possible. Humans are not made like that. I don't care whether you're in UX or not, we are not that kind of creature. We are creatures with emotion, feelings, different experiences, different backgrounds, different ways of thinking. And as soon as you introduce that into a problem, you cannot be, you have to be comfortable with the ambiguity of making decisions that sometimes will be optimal for some, but not optimal for others. And you have to compromise and you have to do all this. So I think that's, to me, is one of the best quality of somebody who's in UX, is this ability to deal with ambiguity and these kinds of wicked problems. And if an employer asks you to solve a UX problem and they hire you to solve a UX problem, you can bet it's complex. If it was not complex and it was very simple, they will not hire you to solve it. They would solve it themselves. Okay. Here's some resource. What is Chloe wanted to know? Okay. I've been working on multiple UX side projects, and I'm currently a UX intern at a startup. Will these experiences help me with my application? I think they will, but again, I don't deal with applications. So my understanding is references, personal statement, and GPA are the core 3 foundation of our application process. They probably will look at your CV as well, your resume, see where you come from. But these are questions, Shivani, that might be better to talk to Andrea from Admission Services. Okay. If in-studio classes are offered after the program start, is it necessary for us to attend in person? Good question. We don't know where this is going to go. I mean, my short answer to this, Emily, would be yes. If we go back in person, it will be necessary to attend in person. That would be my short answer. However, Where is education is going to go in the next year or 2 or 3 at the University of Toronto? I have no idea. Will we continue using some hybrid type of model? Will we have a section when we deliver in person and a section when we deliver remotely for the rest of our time on this program? I have no idea. I don't like to teach virtually. I do my best to teach virtually. I try to give it my 200% all the time, but I don't like it. I like to be in person, in the studio with the students, because the interaction and the kind of proximity I can get to their design problem and the people is I'm a people's person. I'm in UX, like, so I would hate to do a UX job and do it remotely all my life. I would like to meet real users at some point in person and talk to them and do so. So to me, like, the being in person is very, very important. So will I be offering UX remote teaching in the next, when we go back in person? No, me personally as an instructor, I will not sign up for UX remote classes to teach them. However, if our faculty says, you know what, from now on, each course has a remote section and an in-person section, then we will find an instructor for the remote section and we will deliver that. I doubt that this is going to happen. The majority of students just can't wait to go back in person and to be in the studio with others. However, you are right. COVID is changing things, and there are some benefits in remote learning. And it's, you can be anywhere in the world and attend. You can do stuff at your own pace. You can watch videos. You can rewatch recording. So will this influence the way courses are delivered in the next 10, 15, 20 years? I have no answers to that at this point. I'm really sorry. Could we hear more about the interaction design course? So it's called user interface design, and it goes to the principles of design systems, graphic libraries, graphic principles such as composition, hierarchical hierarchy, visual hierarchy, fonts, typography, colors. It talks about, it has a big emphasis on widgets and design systems. So what is it to have a native Apple app? Well, when you have an Apple app, you need to follow the Apple human design guidelines. When you have Android app, you need to follow some of the materials design guidelines from Androids and this. So it really goes into, like, what are some of these design systems? What does it mean to have a brand on a user interface? What does it mean to have consistency from a graphic point of view, not just from an interaction point of view, but from a graphic point of view, right? Like, Apple is extremely picky. If some of you are doing Apple development on the call here, you know what I'm talking about. Like, if you want to publish an app for Apple on the App Store, you better make sure your app follows the Apple human interface guideline. Otherwise, it will not get published and Apple will reject it, right? Like, so what does that mean? How do you design with such design systems? What kind of widgets are available to do certain things? So when you have an experience in your mind, you envision an interaction, what kind of widgets, user interface design components are available in order to materialize that interaction, right? So we talk about all of that stuff in the interaction design course. What quantity should, okay, so that I cannot answer that. Like, what qualities should be reflect on our statement, a personal statement? Well, I just mentioned some of the good qualities of UX students, so maybe you can capitalize on some of those and see how they apply to you and make up a story with that. I just had an internet, okay, so do you get to work on a real project with partnership with real client? Yes, you do. In the Capstone course in 2192, every student is in a group and they're matched with a community organization across the GTA, and now because of COVID across Canada. Like, that's one of the advantage, right? We can broaden our scope to the rest of Canada. Sometimes a little bit more difficult in the US because of citizenship, copyright, NDA agreements. It's possible, not impossible, but there's more work to do around that. But Canada, definitely, we have the same law system across the country, so that's a little easier. Um, and you work on real project with a partner. Now, for the rest of the courses, it really depends. Some courses, yes, some courses, no. And most of the foundation courses, no, except that 2192, the representing UX at the end in the Capstone course. I know that in the UX design gaming course, there's some stuff happening with Ubisoft once in a while. Valiant brings in people from Ubisoft. I don't know under what capacity. I do bring industry partners in my courses, but not necessarily for projects. So, um, but yeah, it happens. It definitely happens in the Capstone course. Having a lot of experience is having a lot of work experience important to become successful applicant? No, it's not. It's interesting, in fact, I would say, because um, sometimes people who have worked for a long time, let's say you've been out of school for like 6, 7, 8, 10 years. Some people have problems recontacting their professors from 10 years ago to have letters of reference because they haven't kept in touch with some of their professors, right? So in this case, I believe our admission office will accept some industry references, but we still want at least one academic reference. I would say the average student in our faculty, and I don't want to make too much generalization here, but it's out of an undergraduate degree. I would say that's probably over 50% of our students are straight out of undergraduate degree. Like they finish their undergraduate degree, they move on to masters. There's a certain number of part-time students. In fact, more and more these days, we're seeing an increase in part-time students. And there's some people as well. I have a manager of UX from Home Depot who's currently taking the UXD concentration, right? So it just goes to show you, and she's been out of school for almost like 15 years, and she's taking the UXD concentration to beef up her education. So, like there's people from all over the place. It's a very, very sort of multidisciplinary, multi-background type of degree. So you'll find almost everything. Is the co-op option available for part-time students? Typically, no, but I know they're starting to change the rules around that. That's a question for the co-op coordinator and more than for me. But I know the short answer is no, it was not, but it's becoming changed now. So maybe it will be in the next year, or it is this year, I'm not sure. The co-op timeline. So the co-op timeline is you complete the 4 required UXD courses before the end of your first year: 1602, 2169, 2170, 2191. So first 2 in the fall, 2 in the winter, or 3 in the fall, 1 in the winter, depending on what you want to do. And that allows you to then apply for co-op probably around January, February, March. So it's going to be coming up soon for the first year students, either from May to September, either from September to December, that's the year between your first and second year, or May to December if you want to do an 8 months co-op. So that's pretty much the timeline here. Do the workshop take place on campus? I'm not sure what you mean with workshops. Maybe the studio courses? I'm not exactly sure. They do take place on campus most of the time, although last year we did go to a company called Click Health to actually have something done in person at their company in a workshop for a studio class. This year we couldn't do this because of the COVID situation, but I try to bring the students out at least once out of campus. Does it help in my application if I have prior? Yes and no. I mean, it's all about your personal statements, how you write it. So I would say work experience is definitely an asset for sure, but there are some students without work experience that also get into our programs. So it's, like it's not, yeah, as Ariana said, it's not the to be all and all type of thing, right? Like, but we're getting a lot more students these days with some work experience. So I have to say, like, that's definitely something. Do we have a capstone project in the final year? Yes, it's in the course INF 2192 called Representing UX. What do they need then? Any specific? I'm not sure what that is. That student left, so I'm not able to. I got a master's degree in education already. When I applied to the MI degree, will my master's GPA be counted? Chloe, that's a question for our admission office. They will be able to answer that question. Do you guys use Unreal Engine or Unity in AR VR? That's a question for Professor Tang, not me. I don't teach the AR VR course. Some quality should reflect. Okay, I've already talked about that. Okay, okay. Does it have my application if I already have experience with Figma and design thinking? Yeah, yes and no. I mean, if Ariel, the problem is that the people who are going to read your admission application, they probably don't know what Figma is. I'll be very honest with you. Our admission office does not know every single piece of software and things that we teach in each concentration. Like that's at the professor level, right? So instead of writing like experience with Figma, I would say experience designing screens for a user interface. That is something that the admission office can probably understand. The word Figma, they won't understand what that means. Like they don't know. With growing interest in the MI Masters, do you anticipate a higher acceptance rate infrastructure to support larger student body? No, in fact, that's the opposite, Nas. We expect it to be more competitive. I'm sorry to say it just as it is like that, but this is what's currently happening. The targets for the university will probably remain at around 350 students admitted every year. Out of that, we got about like 80 to 90, sometimes 100 international students, and the rest are domestic students. Out of this 350, there's probably 275 who accept our offers, which means there's probably, I don't know, like 75 to 80 students who reject our offers of admission because they apply to multiple programs and they maybe get in a letter first from another university first, or they were their second choice, not their first choice, right? Like, so we admit 350, we get in about 275-ish. Out of that, we got about 70 to 90 international students, roughly. I mean, it depends on the years. But the bottom line is these targets are going to stay the same for next year. They're not going to grow. We're going to still admitting about the same amount of students, and about the same amount will choose us. What we've seen though is we're already at the total number of applications that we normally get in a year at this point this year. So if I look at where we were last March when our admission cycle is almost over, we've already reached that target this year already in November. So I expect it to become a little bit more competitive. I don't want to scare anybody here. There's lots of spaces, but at the same time, the pandemic has had a very interesting effect of it's very interesting again. Like I don't want to capitalize on people's misfortune, but often when there's a huge pandemic or there's a big recession, right, like a hardship, economical times or whatever, what we end up seeing is the enrollment in professional programs in universities is going up. People are redefining their skills, they're redefining their career, they are applying to do different types of jobs. They think, oh my God, like what I've done. Like there are people right now who know that their job post-COVID will probably be eliminated or will be not as good of a job that it was pre-COVID. So they're already thinking about changing their career and refocusing their careers, right? So, and this is across U of T. We actually got an email status update on this. If you look at our faculty, architecture, law, Rotman Business School, nursing, pharmacy, all of these are called music. A lot of these are called professional faculties. So we offer professional degrees. Across the board at the U of T, the enrollment and the number of application in professional faculty is up and up this year compared to the same time last year. So again, this is not meant to be a discouraging word. On the contrary, it's meant to be a little bit of a reality check that You need to work on your personal statements. You need to make sure you understand why you want to come to the Faculty of Information. Why is it that you want to do UX here and not somewhere else? You need to go through our website, understand our mission, understand who we are. Go to ischool.org, ischool.org. This is the iSchool movement. I'm just trying to look it up here. iSchool, let me see here. iSchool consortium. It's not ischool.org. Let me see. Let me just get consortium. Okay. List of iSchool faculties of information. Give me 1 second here. So you want to go to a. I'm getting a lot of U of T. It's right now. iSchool consortium. iSchools.org. I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. iSchools with an S.org. I'm going to put it in the chat here. You know, like this is, go look it up. It tells you what an iSchool is about. It tells you who are faculties of information, what are the missions of faculties of information, and ask yourself, why is it that you want to be part of a faculty of information? That will certainly help you. Okay, is there, okay. Thank you, Ariana and Denise. You've answered so many good questions. Like, this is great. Like, okay, wow, Ariana, I think you've really been at it, both of you. Eh? So that's great. I really like it. Like, how about proving return on investment for the business? IOR. That's ROI. That's a huge thing. Like we touched a little bit on that in the representing UX. We talk about KPI and ROI and UX maturity model. Like we have a new course called UX Leadership and Influence, and this is where a lot of that is going to start coming into place. Yes, I agree, Danielle, completely. There's no point of being an amazing UX person if you cannot convince somebody to sign their name on a check and fund your project, right? Like that's often the bottom line. So there's a lot to be said here about that. So we in the last course we talk about like KPI, ROI, but yeah, that new course that we designed on UX leadership and influence is really where I'm hoping all of this will kind of crystallize and say, well, how do you then become a UX leader in your company, and how do you use your influence in order to convince people that there is a return on investment and people should be able to. So it's becoming part of our program slowly, like now that we are growing that capacity. How is UX different than an HCI course? Very interesting. HCI is much more theoretical. It's much more about the human, the computer, and the interaction. HCI is driven by laws of psychology, computer science. UX is as well, but HCI is, I used to teach HCI in computer science before joining the Faculty of Information, where my background is much more theoretical, much more theory driven, much more analytical as well. Like HCI is about creating interaction design from a theory point of view and running experimental design to show that these theories are working on humans. UX is more about like studying peoples and studying their needs and empathizing with them and trying to understand how to solve for people. I'm not saying HCI is not about people, but the experimental approach and the theory approach to it is a very different focus for sure. Is it easy to get a job at the end of this program? I mean, it used to be easy. All of our graduates had jobs in the field. This year's been a little tough, I'm not gonna lie, although to be honest, if I compare to all the other concentration in the program, we're still doing the best. Our graduates are still getting job offers, they're still getting hired. not as fast as they would pre-COVID. I'm hoping that the market will come back slowly but surely once we get out of this thing. There will be lots of design challenges. Think about how the world is going to change post-COVID. A lot of it has to do with experience, has to do with how do we work now? How do we shop? How do we get groceries? How do we do this? Like, I mean, a lot of it has to do with like mobility, remote learning, remote connection, application that will allow us to do so much more. Like the remote learning and the remote working from home, we're barely scratching the surface of what it is to work from home, right? Like we're like right now, like post-pandemic, we used to take 2 million people every day from the suburb and move them downtown Toronto to work. And then at the end of the day, we would ship them back to the suburb. That model is unsustainable. And if there's one thing that the pandemic has taught us, is that it doesn't work, and it still works. Working from home works, but we were barely starting to scratch the surface. Like right now, there are people with this pandemic who have sold their house in Toronto, downtown Toronto, to move to the suburb. There are people who have regained 3 hours of their lives every day because they don't have to commute to work. There is no way these people will want to go back to where we were pre-COVID. So there's a lot of experience challenge. There's a lot of UX challenge coming up in the post-COVID years, or interaction with technologies, with system, with touch screens, we're going to have lots and lots to explore. So I'm hoping our field is there and present and ready to go. In the meantime, it's a little slower than usual. But you know what? Like, if you work for Zoom, it ain't slow. Like, right? So there are sectors of UX and sectors of technology that have seen a growth. I mean, we've had 3 graduates hired at Loblaw Digitals in the last year to work on the online grocery shopping experience, right? So that's something that I could never predict in March, right? But because Loblaw Digital started kicking up, and groceries, online groceries, and they online takeout, museums. I mean, a lot of people are saying that museums are suffering and the museum sectors is collapsing. Yeah, museums are suffering. I'm not saying the opposite, but how many emails I've received in the last 6 months from museums to ask about our students, if they could help building websites and virtual visits and this and that. Like, I mean, holy cow, like it's incredible. Like I didn't want to approach museum this year for some of my projects, because my way of thinking was, well, I'm gonna give these museum folks a break, right? They're already suffering so much. I don't want to be the prof who's coming and asking them to like give me projects for my classes. But no, it's the opposite. They're coming to me with projects already canned and ready to go, because they want that digital experience, and that the museum to be more online. So there's lots and lots of challenge post-COVID waiting for us. And UX is gonna, in my opinion, is gonna play a central piece. Now that we've learned what it is to be in a virtual world for a certain amount of time, we're going to want to maintain some of it, not all of it, but some of it. And we're going to want to fine tune what we maintain and work on it, right? So there's lots of stuff to come, for sure. Wow, Ariana, Penise, thank you so much. You've just like made my life so much easier here. That's great. Like, okay, thanks. Okay. What companies students get to work with for the Capstone? They're generally nonprofit organization. I'm a strong believer in giving back to the community. We're very privileged in our position of being students and professors at the University of Toronto. So I don't really work with major corporation. I work with small local companies or community organization to give back. So I've worked with women's shelters, food banks, Pride Ontario. I've worked with Special Olympics Ontario. I've worked with LGBTQ Youth Line for the call center. I've worked with a lot of great community organization across the GTA, because I believe that our students should be giving back to the community. So that's my way of setting up the Capstone course. Does the university bring in students, bring in these companies or the students. I'm not sure if you're talking about the Capstone course or not. Let me see here. It's a mix of both. For jobs, we have a relationship with companies and they bring in their job posting and we hunt their job posting. For the Capstone course, I'm really going to the company and I make call for proposal and I bring them to us. So it's a mix of both. Like, okay, okay, all right, great. Thank you so much. Will the UD leaderships course be also include managing company cultures? Yes, absolutely. The user leadership courses should be taught by two IBM staff. One of them is an IBM Global Design Principles. There's 20 people like that in the world within IBM Corporation, and she's been doing leadership training for the last 20 years. So it will definitely include what you're talking about here. Do you see any state of the arts for UX are tools for UX research and testing use? I don't. That's interesting. Hmm. That's a very interesting point, Danielle. I don't for now. Like, yeah, I would have to think about that and research it. Nothing comes on top of my head right now. Yeah, Shopify is like crazy right now, right? Like, and I mean, Shopify also closed all of their physical office, and they said from now on we're becoming a work from home company, and so they really capitalized, and they were the first one in the tech sector to announce that. They were the first one to like really react to the COVID and say, you know what, like this is changing our ways. We're gonna change with it. Like we're not gonna be afraid of this. We're gonna embrace it and go. And I mean, holy, like we have like two people working for Shopify who have graduated from our program, and we also have very good relationship with them for co-op employment. So yeah, they've been capitalizing on this whole movement and being very proactive about it, right? How does experience with smaller communities reflect on your CV or portfolio? It actually reflects as a project and a case study. So I think it's part of the iSchool value. It's part of the Faculty of Information value, is this idea of looking at some marginalized place, people or organization, giving back to the community, looking at doing design not just for these big box and these big shops, but looking for helping at the local level. You can produce just as great of a case study with working with local or community organization. And in fact, a lot of the time, these local and community organizations are really, really interested in putting together what you do and really implementing it and making it happen, as opposed to some of these big box stores who hire you and may not be like using what you've done for them. So what kind of job can I start to accumulate UX work experience in order? Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's a question that requires much more reflection because I would have to talk to you about it and stuff. But um, like just first of all, you have to know what UX is about. You have to start reading about it. You have to understand the process. A lot of students work on their own little side projects, like they do a little bit of freelancing. Some of them just redesign things for the sake of redesigning things, just for practicing the concepts and the design thinking cycles and all of that. Um, but you should really look at, like eventually UX position. But again, it's a catch-22. Is like, what background do you need to get hired in these UX positions so that you can grow in these positions and get more positions? Like, so it's like you need some foundations, you need some background. You need to build a portfolio. You need to show how you can solve problem, how you can design things through a problem, how you can take the voice of the user through a problem. Like this is the kind of stuff you need to practice and you need to read about and practice either on your own or through some jobs or through some co-ops, some internships, some freelance work. There's lots of different ways to achieve that. Like, I'm at the end of the chat now. Yes. So the design of everyday think is a classic. Don't Make Me Think is a classic. I use a book called Interaction Design, Beyond Human Computer Interaction. Been using this book for 20 years. A little bit more theoretical, but something that is, yes, Ariana's showing it, but it's very good for foundation. Uh, Information architecture for the web and beyond. This is the book we use in the course for information architecture. So I basically have a mix of practitioners textbooks, anything made by O'Reilly. There's a publisher called O'Reilly on experience mapping, on using designing user interface. O'Reilly publishes books that are put together by practitioners. So it's much more practitioner oriented. Don't Make Me Think. Krug is also a practitioner type of book oriented. And I also use some more like academic book like Interaction Design, which I believe is a foundation book that everybody should read. Don Norman, which is more of a popularist type of book. But yeah, there's like definitely lots of things to do around those things. If I'm not experienced in the domain, how will I be able to get my portfolio together? Well, you'll start at the bottom like everybody else. So we start with a website like Wix, Wix.com. You go sign up for a free account. You use predefined templates. You drag and drop some of your components. You build your case together. That's how every student starts like that, right? Like students who don't have portfolios starts with these types of website, and then they incrementally build their portfolio. As I said, your portfolio is a design project on its own. So the more you the more you apply design thinking process to your portfolio, the better it's going to be. So you iterate on it, you test it, you evaluate it, you see what people are looking for in your portfolio, and you try to target your audience and your message towards these people and what they're looking for. And so it is a design project. You started in the first semester, and you're going to keep growing it and keeping working on it for all this time, right? Like, so yeah, but typically Wix.com, right? Wix.com, and then you can sign up for a free account, use a predefined template, start throwing some stuff. WordPress.com, Squarespace.com, GoDaddy.com, like whatever you want. Like there's lots of different ways, right? Like, yeah, Webflow. Lots of people make it on Webflow as well. You're absolutely right. That's another good one. I don't force students to use one or the other. I give them the choice. Yeah, Webflow is a learning curve. Wix has been one of the most popular one with students in the past 3 years. Very easy and intuitive to use, and doesn't require too much at the end of the day. Okay, I think that's it. Can I do any course via continuing study or get involved in? Can I do any course via continuing study or get involved instead of just waiting until next year to get started? Yeah. You can do courses through continuing study if you want. They won't count.
Yeah, I would also.
Towards your degree. Go.
Sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
was going to suggest if you are looking for things to do related to UX that aren't while you're waiting to hopefully get into this program. There's a lot of design communities within Toronto. If you are in Toronto or even wherever you are, I'm sure if you look, there's probably a design community somewhere. So the ones that I've gotten involved with, like I've talked about it a little bit, but Civic Tech Toronto, there's basically, it's just a bunch of people who are interested in creating civic solutions, and there's always opportunities to hop onto a project at any point or to start your own project. It's a great way to build experience. There's lots of other groups like that. I know Hexagon UX is out there if you identify
UX
gender
research,
non-binary.
UX model research, yeah, lots. Yeah, that's a good way to get involved. I mean, these communities were a little bit more interesting before when they were meetups and stuff like that, because you can meet all kinds of people. But still, like UXTO is one of them. There's one called UXPA Toronto. There's one called UX Research TO. So Civic Tech is a very good one. Thank you, Ariana, for. So that's one way that you can get involved. Continuing education, definitely. You won't get any credit for it. So it's like it depends if you have the money for it, and then if you want to, then good. But I'm just warning you that you cannot transfer that education towards credit for a master's degree, so just be careful about that. And then yeah, like yeah, that's what I could think of right now. Great. Uh, Working another year, get more experience. I don't think it really matters, to be honest. Like, I mean, maybe not. It depends the kind of students, the kind of person you are. Like, it doesn't really matter that much, to be honest. Like, I mean, yeah, if you have experience, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, you can get quicker on software and things like that. But you also have students in the class that don't have that experience. So really, at the end of the day, the first semester is a leveling experience and a leveling semester. So I only have an experience for 7 months until now. So yeah, that's again like over 50% of our students just come straight of undergrad. So they don't even have any experience. They finish in their undergrad in April, and in September they start their masters. So it's not really necessary. I'm not saying it doesn't help. I'm not saying it's not necessary. Of course it helps. Any experience in life helps, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral. Okay, we're good. So only 13 people left anyway. Thank you if you sticked around until the end. I really appreciate it. I try to answer all the questions as much as I could. And then if you get in, if you get admitted, I will see you next year. In the meantime, I'm available, of course, through email. You can find me on my website and through the faculty website. And then if you have any questions, I can always answer your questions as well. Thank you, Ariana. Thank you, Penny. It's very grateful to have you here with us today. You've answered many different questions, which is great. On that note, have a good rest of your day, good rest of the weekend, if it's the weekend in the part of the world where you are. If not, maybe you're restarting your work tomorrow. But we will um, make sure that you enjoy what is a very odd time and situation. But you know, there's always some positive that comes out of it, and I'm sure that once it's all over, there'll be a lot of positive coming out of this. So I wish you best of luck if you decide to apply to our program to get in. And then again, I'm available through email if you have any questions, or our admission office also is available through email if you have any questions regarding your application process. And then I hope to see you all next year in class. Thank you, Ariana. Thank you, Panis. Very nice to have you around. Bye.